your introduction copy is going to entice someone to connect with you or not, right? It's as important as sales copy because what you are trying to do with your words is motivate someone to take an action.
Hey, Laptop Freedom Babes,
This
Wanderlust.
is Hello from Greece.
Hello.
This training, heads up, might initially appear kind of simple, but the reality is that this training has the potential to really sort of flip your narrative and potentially, flip the probability of connections being made through something as simple as an intro post. Now, a lot of you have seen me make connections with, alumni to potential clients, or just make general connections. You've also seen me introduce people on Facebook Lives and interviews and all that kind of stuff. Proper introductions is a skill that a lot of people still have the opportunity to learn. And in fact, funny thing is that I would say where I started to really learn, where the light bulb went off for me on how to make a proper introduction, was watching the movie Bridget Jones's Diary. Now, if you've seen Bridget Jones's Diary, then we're best friends because it is literally my number one movie. And there is this scene where Bridget's friends tell Bridget how to make a proper introduction, because Bridget, who is a bit of a loose cannon, a little, she's a little all over the place. I relate a lot to her. She was about to walk into like a big, lawyer soiree where there's going to be a bunch of professionals, and she was really concerned about not having the proper manners and behaviors and knowing the protocol for those simple things like making a proper introduction. So how Bridget's friend teaches her how to make an introduction is pretty straightforward. It's like, hey, John, meet Miranda. Miranda is my childhood friend, and she and I went to boarding school together. Miranda, John is my colleague, and we work on a lot of high-profile human rights cases together. And then they talk. What you've done in that introduction is that you have given both people something to hook into, something to be like, oh, that's interesting. What you've done is you've introduced the people and you've started a conversation. So how can this lesson from the great Bridget Jones be translated into something as simple as creating an intro post in a Facebook group, or really on any platform? For the case of this training, I'm just going to stick with Facebook groups. I see a lot of intro posts in Facebook groups that cause a particular reaction inside of me that it would not be ideal for the person posting. So I read intro posts that make me feel like negative feelings, like, oh, I don't like this person, or I don't think that me and this person would get along, or I don't feel like helping this person, right? So, and that's strictly through an intro post. I don't know anything about this person. I also see intro posts that you're like, oh my gosh, she seems awesome. I would love to meet up with her. I don't even know her, and I think we would be BFFs, right? It's from one simple intro post, someone, a total stranger, i.e. a potential client or a potential connection or a potential networking buddy, you can give them an initial reaction simply off of an intro post. So it feels like a simple concept, and yet it is some of these simple concepts that are the most important. Amazing. So there's three things that I want you to consider when it comes to writing an intro post, okay? Writing an intro post is the sales copy of you, right? So you are introducing yourself as if you're like, hello, everyone, I am selling the product that is me. Now, I'm not saying that you need to be like a gross car salesman, and we're going to do an example where you're going to really see the difference. But your introduction post, how you introduce yourself, really is the sales copy. So the way that sales copy entices someone to buy something or not, your introduction copy is going to entice someone to connect with you or not, right? It's as important as sales copy, because what you are trying to do with your words is motivate someone to take an action. That's what you're trying to do. And so, what is the purpose of an introduction post? Is that you want to create connection. The same way that sales copy wants the person, the consumer, to purchase the item, right? So, you need to go into your intro post. This is what I want you to consider. Firstly, figuring out what the hell you want out of the intro post. Do you want connection? Do you want a job opportunity? Do you want a mentor? Do you want support? Do you want referrals? Do you want friends? What is the main motivation behind your intro post? And then we have to figure out how to write it in a way that's going to motivate people to take that action, right? And when you are clear on the goal of your intro post, then the reader, other readers, people who don't know you, they're going to understand what the goal is. And the people who can't fulfill that goal will move on. And the people who potentially can fulfill that goal might reach out and be like, hey, I can be your friend, or I can be that connection, or I can mentor you on that topic, right? The second thing that I want you to consider is I want you to consider giving people lots to hook into that starts conversation. So you really want to, and I'll break down some of the do's and don'ts of what to put in an introduction post. But the second main thing to consider is giving readers potential connections, lots of juicy Velcro hooks that they can latch onto and use to start a conversation with you, right? So going back to the example in Bridget Jones, how Bridget was taught to make introductions was to say, hey, Mark, meet Miranda. Mark, Miranda is a friend of mine from boarding school. We went to boarding school in Queens together. Miranda, Mark is my coworker. We work on a number of human rights cases together. What you have given both parties is something to hook into to start a conversation. So that is a big thing I want you to consider when you're writing an intro post. The third thing I want you to consider when writing an intro post is sharing your story. And sharing your story creates relatability. And I don't know if relatability is a word because in my notes there's a squiggly line under it. I also may have just spelled it incorrectly. But the point is that you are giving enough information that someone could relate to it and be like, hey, me too. Or, hey, I have a similar story. Or, hey, yeah, me as well, right? So you want to share your story, and it doesn't have to be your whole life story with your private information and all the trauma you've gone through, but you want to give your intro post some context, who you are, what your story is, so that there is something that people can relate to. And yes, you're going to have a lot of people that read your intro post and say, oh, I don't relate to any of that. But that's fine. Those people probably aren't your ideal connections anyway. Okay, so what I want to jump into is I want to jump into some do's and don'ts. Let's start with the positives. Let's start with the do's for your intro post. So here is some breakdown of what you should include in a super ideal intro post that's going to create connection, okay? And I read a lot of intro posts. I even suggest that, potential aspiring VAs and even veteran VAs that want to refresh their connections to be writing intro posts. So here are some do's. The first do is share 2 to 3 things about you that are not work related. Okay. These are the story points. These are the hooks. So yes, we all know that you're making an introduction post because you're an online entrepreneur, you're a VA, you're a whatever, but there's more to you than that. right? There's a lot of VAs out there. So there's a lot of social media managers out there. There's a lot of OBMs out there. So what makes you unique? What makes you you? So some examples are like, hey, I'm a tourist living in Colorado and I'm a crazy cat lady. That's three things that someone could hook into and be like, oh my gosh, I'm a tourist too. Or someone could be like, hey, Colorado based as well. Or someone could, say, also a crazy cat lady, would love to see a pic of your cats, right? You're giving someone a jump off point to start a conversation with you. When someone sees those hooks and then they use that hook to start a conversation with you, that's when you can be like, bingo, I'm going to go in, respond, and now we're talking. Now we're asking questions. Now we're making a connection, right? So you want to add 2 or 3 items to your intro post that are not about you, that are not work related. So they don't have to be complicated. They could be a hobby of yours. They can be where you're currently located. Some, general, broad, characteristics about you that enough people could be, hey, yeah, I also horseback ride in Arizona, right? And then you're starting a conversation. Thing 2 to do in your intro post is explain your niche and your ideal client. So not everyone has a niche and not everyone has an ideal client. But if you can at least paint a little bit of a picture of now what you do for work, what the services you offer, what's the business that you're running, now people understand, okay, so she is a horseback rider who's a tourist from Colorado, and she's a virtual assistant that loves to work with remote veterinarians. I don't even know if that's a thing, but you get the point. So some examples of sort of explaining your niche and your ideal client are, I love helping female health coaches with online course creation. Now, is claiming and posting your niche and your ideal client setting you in stone and now you have to be that forever? No, not at all, right? You do not need to niche 100% of your business. That is a fact. So you can still make an intro post, and maybe you're making an intro post in a Facebook group full of female health coaches. And so therefore your intro post is going to say, hey, I love helping female health coaches with online course creation, right? You might be making an intro post in a Facebook group that focuses on course creation. So then you're like, hey, I love helping female health coaches with course creation. Third option is you might be in a Facebook group for remote veterinarians. So then your intro post will say, hey, I love helping remote veterinarians with scheduling their appointments, right? So just because you have put a niche or an ideal client you've explained, how do I want to say it? Because I want to be very careful when I say niche or ideal client, because I know when I say that people get triggered and they say, what do you mean you said I didn't have to have a niche? Or what do you mean you said I didn't have to have an ideal client? In your intro post, if you are really strategic and smart about who you are looking for based on the group that you are posting in, then you're not setting your entire business in stone. You're not niching 100% of your business. What you're doing is you're making it really clear who you're talking to and what you are talking about. So your ideal client will be your female health coaches, and then your how do you support them is course creation. So you're narrowing down your intro post so that it's not too general. We've all heard the expression that when you're talking to everyone, in fact, you're talking to no one, because people don't know when they're supposed to listen, right? So if you can get a bit more specific about, hey, I'm talking to you about this specific thing inside this Facebook group, and people can be like, oh, Paula, I'm a female health coach and I am totally looking at creating a new course. You're my gal. It does not matter if you have other clients that are not female health coaches and you provide other services that are not course creation. That is not what that means. It means that in this particular intro post, that is who you're talking to and that is what you're talking about, right? Okay, the third do for your intro post is to add a photo. This is huge in the online world, right? In the online world, it is not possible for us to make that visual connection that we normally are able to make when we're being introduced to someone in person, right? So introductions in person, this is one of the oldest practices in human history. You put your hand out, you shake it, you make an introduction, or whatever, different cultures do. Making introductions in person is one of the oldest practices in human history. So now we have to move that online. And how do we still incorporate that visual connection and that gentle handshake in the online world? You add a photo. The other thing that helps with adding a photo is you are not asking the person to click on your profile, get taken to your profile, go to click on main profile, then click on your profile image and see, take a look at you and make that connection. By posting a photo, you're like, hello, here I am. This is me. I'm smiling. I'm happy. Maybe this is me on horseback. Maybe this is me creating courses online. Whatever that photo is, it's another hook point. Not only do you look friendly, not only can people put a face to the name, which helps people feel more security when meeting a stranger, but it also, creates a hook point. Maybe someone sees something in your photo that they love. Maybe you're a crazy cat lady and you've got all your cats in your photo, and someone's like, oh my gosh, the white fluffy one on the left is the cutest. Then you can hop in and be like, hey, let's talk, right? So it's all about creating lots of points that people can read it, look at it, and think, oh, I've got something to say. You're sparking conversation so that you are creating connection, right? Okay. The fourth do in your intro post is to end with some kind of call to action, right? So this is circling back to what is the point of your intro post. We don't want to create willy-nilly intro posts because that will come out in the writing and then people will read it and think, what is the point of this? I don't think they want anything from us. I think they're just posting willy-nilly, right? Willy-nilly is something that you can feel through the screen. So ending your intro post with some kind of call to action is going to be linked to what is the point of creating your intro post. So some of your call to actions can literally just be like, anyone else living in Colorado? Question mark. And then people can be like, me, hey, yes, totally. And then you can comment back on all of those and start conversation, start connection, start asking questions that they then need to respond to. Another more specific call to action could be similar to the post that you might put on your personal Facebook profile. It'd be like, I have room for another unicorn client. If you know of anyone, I'd love to connect. So you're asking something from the reader, whether you are ending it with a question. So the person's like, oh, I'm supposed to answer this. Or you're ending it with like, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Keep me in mind, right? So you're ending the post with a call to action so that people understand that you actually want an action to be taken, because that is not always clear. And when there isn't a call to action, you're really relying on only a certain percentage of people that just feel this internal desire to take action on your post. To increase action being taken, you should end your intro post with some kind of call to action. And to determine what your call to action is, you've got to get really clear on why you're making the post in the first place. Okay, so those are the 4 main do's for your intro post. Let me recap them really quickly before I move on to the don'ts. 4 do's. Share 2 to 3 things about you that are not work related. 2, explain your sort of niche and your ideal client for that particular Facebook group so people understand that you're talking to them and you're talking to them about something very specific. 3, add a photo. And 4, end your post with some sort of call to action. Okay, now some don'ts. Some don'ts for your intro post. And unfortunately, I see more poorly written intro posts than I do properly written intro posts. Similar to how you are supposed to properly hold your fork and knife, how to make a proper introduction is an basic societal behavior and set of manners that very few people are actually formally trained how to do. Okay. So, don'ts. First, don't. Do not sound desperate. It does not matter how desperate you might feel. Do not sound desperate in your intro post. Sounding desperate does two things. First, it calls in the wrong person. It calls in the wrong person that's, desperate to help you and is scrambling and might be giving you false information. And the other thing that sounding desperate does is it turns away people that might think, I could totally help this person, but it's too late now. They're desperate, right? And when you sound desperate in your intro post, this is why it's a don't. What you're doing is, in fact, you're putting pressure on someone else to sort you out, to fix the problem, to help you. You're handing the pressure off instead of owning it as your responsibility, right? So I see a lot of introduction posts inside Facebook groups where people are like literally saying, I'm desperate for a job. I need a job. I've lost my form of income. My partner left me, all of these things. Like, I'm desperate. I basically need money yesterday. And there's a panic and there's a desperation that literally does not speed up the process of you creating a connection. In fact, it could slow it down. So no matter how desperate you feel, really refrain from sounding desperate inside your intro post, because the main reaction that you're going to get is that people are going to feel pressured, that they're suddenly responsible to help you out. And people are going to think, why did they leave it to the last minute? How did they get themselves here? They are clearly not organized. They're not on top of their stuff. They're a VA or they're an online business person I don't feel like connecting with, right? So really owning the responsibility and staying calm inside your intro post, opposed to sounding desperate, is going to be a lot more beneficial. So the first don't is don't sound desperate. The second don't is don't only pitch. Don't only pitch. So what I mean by that is, don't create an intro post where you're like, hey, I'm a virtual assistant and I'm looking for clients. That's gross. That's a pitch. That is the old way of selling, where someone would come knocking on your door while you are in the privacy of your home trying to sell you vacuum cleaners. It's pitchy, it's gross, it's something that we associate with, old car commercials. So don't only pitch. If you are not painting a little bit of a image of who you are outside of just being a virtual assistant or an online business manager or whatever you offer for your service, then you're not giving people a more whole image to hook into. So second don't is don't only pitch. And the third don't is don't sit back, wait, and think, no one wants to be my friend, right? So if you create an intro post and no action is taken on it, it's not because everyone is evil, and it's not because you suck and no one wants to be your friend. It's probably in the copy of the intro post. It's probably how you wrote it, right? So when you make that intro post and then you come back and you visit it, you're like, no one wants to be my friend. I'm the worst. People are evil. Everyone's against me. Most likely that's not true. It probably means that you have something in the post that you get to tweak, that you get to work on. So revisit the 4 don'ts and see if those are included, and revisit the 4 do's and make sure those are included, and revisit the 3 don'ts and make sure that those are not in there. So Another example of this, and I really want to bring this back to why an intro post is the sales copy of you, is that if you were to sell your used car and you post your you post it in the local classifieds and you don't get any interest, no one reaches out to you, it's not because people aren't shopping for cars. That's not the case, right? Every day, people are looking to buy a secondhand car. So if you post your secondhand car for sale in the classifieds and no one reaches out to you, it's not because no one is looking for a car. And it is not because it's priced too high and so you have to lower the price. It's not because people saw that it was your car and they don't like you and therefore they didn't reach out. Every day people are willing to buy used cars at a variety of price points. What it probably means is that you get to go back into the post of your car being for sale in the classifieds and tweak the copy. Okay. So if we compare two different posts for an identical used car for sale. Now, bear with me. I am not a car aficionado at all, and I don't write a lot of sales copy, but I want to create a really simple comparison so that you can see the difference. So the first post of the used car for sale is going to say something like Toyota, 8,000 miles, a few scratches, $8,000. That's it. Maybe there's like a picture of the front of the car. That's it. Now, that's not going to stand out very well against all the other sales posts of used cars, right? And it's very similar if we do an intro post inside a Facebook group. There's lots of posts inside the Facebook group. There's lots of intro posts inside Facebook groups. So how is yours going to stand out? Yours is not going to stand out if all it says is Toyota, 8,000 miles, a few scratches, $8,000, and then just a photo of the front of the car. We all know this, right? We've all seen this. We see this all the time in when houses are for sale, right? If there's not enough images for the house, you're like, well, I want to see inside the house. I want to feel like I'm in it, right? So if you take that same identical used car and change the copy and it says something like, this may be the car of your dreams. She has cruised 8,000 incredible miles through city lights and up and down coastal roads. A few minor beauty marks here and there are nothing to shy from. Instead, they tell the stories of all her adventures she's been on. Driving this car makes you feel like a king, and we're only selling it for $8,000. And then you add 10 photos from the angle of the driver, the front of the car, the dash of the car as if you're sitting in it and driving it, the passenger seat, what does the back seat look like, the trunk, how much stuff can the trunk fit in there? Is the trunk maybe full of beach towels and volleyballs? Because you want the reader to look at that sales post and think, wow, I can see myself driving that car. That's the car I want. That is the difference between a post that's going to have a good reaction and a post that won't. And that's what I mean by saying that an intro post is the sales copy for you. So if you just kind of say, hey, I'm a VA looking for clients, and no photo, that's the same of just saying like Toyota, 8,000 miles, few scratches, right? But if you create an intro post that, paints a little bit of picture of who you are, who your ideal client is in that particular Facebook group, the sort of services that you offer, and then a call to action, you're making it a much more well-rounded and whole experience for the reader. That they can see you. It's like they know you. And in that car example, it's like they can see themselves already driving that car. And this is all online, right? They haven't seen the car in person. They haven't met you in person. They don't know what the car's engine sounds like. They don't know what your voice sounds like, but it doesn't matter. An intro post where someone reads it and thinks, oh my gosh, I can see myself being this person's friend. Or, wow, this virtual assistant is totally who I'm looking for the services that she says that she offers. And those are the kind of intro posts that are going to create so much conversation. All you need is for people to comment underneath your intro post, and then you can reply and you can start conversations by asking questions. And then you see where it goes from there. Giving value, asking questions, getting to know the people, creating connection, right? The conversation that you have after the intro post is a whole nother training. And so I won't dive into that right now. But that intro post, that initial classified for you to create connection, can make or break it. So if you're thinking of creating an intro post to create connection inside Facebook groups or on your profile, whether you're new to virtual assisting or you are looking to sort of regenerate and refresh your people that are in your network, people that you know, and connections, which as entrepreneurs, we are always needing to grow and increase our audience, whether that is people that we're selling to or people that we're making connections with. It's just creating, it's constantly growing your network and your bubble, right? It's something that's very, very important. Creating a bomb.com intro post is really, really important. Okay. That was solid. Hope that was really, really helpful. The reason why I was inspired for this training is that I've seen a lot of intro posts that have fallen flat on their faces. And I've also seen a lot of intro posts that create a lot of connection. And I'm just curious. And so like I said, making introductions, whether between two people or an introduction of yourself, is a really, really old practice. It's one of the first practices of humankind. Animals do it. It is what the whole world does. But because it's such a simple and such an old practice, we don't necessarily get formal learning and training about it. Again, right? It's like how to properly hold a knife and fork. Everyone can eat and use a knife and fork in the way that works best for them. But rarely now are we taught how to, like, proper table manners, how to properly hold a knife and fork, because what does it matter? It can matter. It can matter how you make a proper introduction. Sure, you can just be like, hey, Rebecca, meet Kaylee. And that be it. Sure. That's like grabbing your knife and fork and like making it work and eating. Or it can be a much more enriched experience. And when it comes to expanding your network, enriched introductions are way stronger than basic and poor introductions. So I hope that was helpful. And I would love to answer any questions that you have in the comments, and let me know if you caught the replay.